For 35 years, my husband Andy and I raised 3 sons and created a good life. When we had problems, we thought out loud together, we talked, and we figured out what we needed to do. We took on abusive and alcoholic parents, depression, cancer, and more depression. But after 35 years, our sons are grown and married and settled on opposite coasts. Andy was having trouble at work. I wanted to do what we'd always done. I wanted to think out loud together, talk, and figure out what we needed to do. Andy was spending even more time hunched over his computer. On the increasingly rare occasions when we bumped into each other in our empty 6-bedroom house, any conversation we had was as likely to end up in dish throwing or door slamming. On Mother's Day, after an epically horrible visit from our middle son and his wife, we took them to the airport, and as they disappeared through the sliding glass doors into the terminal, I turned to Andy in the driver's seat and I said, "Did you see? Did you see?" And with one rhetorical question after another, I began recounting the entire weekend we had all spent together. I wanted him to say, "Yes, I saw. Yes, that wasn't right. Yes, we have a problem." He didn't say a word. But I needed to think out loud. I needed to talk. I needed to find a way to make things better. "Did you see?" I said as we drove up the driveway. "Did you see?" I said as we walked from the garage into the kitchen. And for the rest of the evening into the night, whenever another weekend moment would pop into my head, I'd find Andy in the bathroom, the kitchen, at his desk and say, "Did you see?" Until late that night, I found him in his chair in the family room doing a crossword puzzle. I sat down on the couch across from him and I said, "Did you?" He stood up. "That's it. I'm leaving. Tomorrow I'm getting a real estate agent and finding an apartment downtown, and then I'm getting a lawyer." And he walked out of the room and up the stairs. I followed him, begging and crying. "Please, Andy, I know we can work this out. I know. Please, just sit down with me." Crying and begging, I followed him up the stairs, into the bathroom while he brushed his teeth, into our bedroom while he took his pillow from our bed, and into the room that used to be Jonathan's. I pleaded and I begged. I was already picturing our granddaughter's bat mitzvah in 12 years when Andy would be there with his new wife, a 40-year-old, sandy-haired sociology professor, and I'd be there alone in 73. "Anne, I told you to get out of here. I told you I need my sleep. I walked away from my parents. I will walk away from you." I got up and walked out. I walked across the hall to my room, the room that used to be our room. I felt so alone, and I felt like I would be alone for the rest of my life. But I couldn't be alone now. I needed someone to talk to. I needed someone to keep me afloat. It was midnight. I didn't want to call my kids. What would I say to them? I thought of my parents. I hadn't talked to my 88-year-old father or 83-year-old mother in 5 years. I'm afraid of them, especially my father. When I was 7, he took my beagle puppy and threw him down the stairs and killed him. And when I'd call him on Father's Day or his birthday, early in the conversation at the beginning of one of my sentences, he'd say, "Anne, I don't want to talk to you anymore," and hang up. But they're people, and they're nocturnal, and I was desperate. So I picked up my iPhone and tapped on their names. My father answered. "Hi, Dad. It's Anne." "Oh, hello, Anne." He didn't sound surprised or happy or annoyed to be hearing from me. "Dad, Andy and I are getting divorced." "Oh, I'm sorry to hear that." And he did sound sorry. He asked me whose idea it was, and I told him, adding, "Dad, I don't want to get divorced. I want to be married to Andy. Dad, I really want to be married to Andy." There was a silence. Dad, please don't hang up. Please, please stay on the line. I don't want to be alone. Please, Dad." "Anne, you've got to take care of yourself. You've got to get some sleep. Things will be better in the morning." I thought of going to the medicine cabinet and popping to Ambien, but then I thought of waking up in the morning and hearing Andy rolling his suitcase out the door. "No, Dad, things won't be better in the morning." "Anne, if there's one word I can use to describe you, it's persevering." I had known where this sentence was going when he began it. It's the only non-negative adjective either parent has ever used to describe me. "Anne, when you decide you want something, you put your mind to it and get it. If Andy's what you want, you have to figure out what you need to get him back and do it." "Dad, I have to go. Thank you." I dropped the iPhone on the night table. I ran into Jonathan's room. Andy was asleep on his side with his back to the door. I jostled him. He turned over, opened his eyes, and saw me. I could tell he didn't remember at first what had happened. Then he propped himself on his elbows and he said, "Anne, I told you to get out of here. I told you I need my sleep." And then he sat himself up straight against the wooden slats of the headboard and glowered. I stepped around the queen-size bed, meeting his icy stare, until I slid between the sheets on my side next to him. My foot dropped, and my toes were touching his ankle. He didn't move. He didn't pull away. So I put my head down on the pillow. "Anne, I walked away from my parents. I will walk away from you." I sat up and looked into his dark brown eyes. "Yes, Andy, but there's one big difference. I love you." The muscles around his eyes softened, and I leaned back against the headboard and put my hand on his arm. And then we started talking. For months and months and months, we continued talking. We reevaluated, we renegotiated, we reaffirmed. It was a lot of work. It still is. But now, when I picture my granddaughter's bat mitzvah, I'm standing there beside Andy. Thank you.